Welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the cases when UAE is not a great place to form a company. Now, I live in UAE for a good portion of the year. I love UAE. We have lots of clients with companies in UAE, so this is not like a thing against UAE. It's not that UAE is a bad place by any stretch. However, what I've been noticing is I've been having a lot of people contact me who are not coming to UAE, who are just wanting to form, and they're saying, hey, listen, I want to set up a UAE company, or I was thinking about setting up a UAE company. And this is generally not the best option. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about when UAE makes a lot of sense, when UAE does not make a lot of sense, how that's changed over time, which circumstances it can be a really great thing for you, and which cases you should consider another option. So let's dive into that. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. Your support is very much appreciated. Thank you for being here. If you're new, I am Michael from Offshore Citizen. We're some of the foremost international tax and relocation specialists in the world. We help you with figuring out what is the best solution for you in terms of where to live, in terms of how to set your company up. You don't necessarily have to relocate. You can stay in your home country and possibly, if your business is right, form some sort of an international structure. It's not necessarily that easy. As I always say, if it was so easy as forming a company in a zero tax country, everybody would do it and local tax department would be out of business. It doesn't work that way. But we can help you to navigate those rules, which can be fairly complex, help you actually setting up those companies, getting other citizenships, Plan Bs, residencies, banking, etc. And so if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff, you're in the right place. Please reach out to us. You can book a call with me, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below, or you can send a message through offshorecitizen.net, and we're happy to help you there. In fact, I kind of prefer you send a message there as a good starting point. Anyway, let's dive in. So here's the thing. UAE, if you're going to live in UAE, you're basically going to, and you're going to run a business, you more or less are going to be affected by UAE's tax rules, and therefore it makes a lot of sense to have a UAE business. Very simple. In addition, if you want to relocate to UAE, and UAE is an incredibly popular place and is probably going to continue to be a popular place and grow in interest because it offers a very unique value proposition, then one of the main ways to get residency is by forming a company. It's very common. We help people with this every month, and I definitely think, great, that's fantastic. However, if you're somebody who's not going to move to UAE, then setting up a company in UAE is pretty expensive. Why is this? Generally speaking, first of all, you need residency. And to maintain the residency, you typically have to visit every 6 months. So right off the bat, your cost of maintaining a company just went up a lot because of all these travel costs, etc. So whereas I could form a company in Hong Kong or the US or Estonia or Cyprus or a bunch of these places, and I just pay for the cost of the company, here I have to pay for the cost of the company, I have to pay for getting a residency, I have to pay to travel there and spend a bunch of time there and be in hotels, then I have to pay to visit every once in a while. Like, all of this just bloats the cost of running an operation a lot, which doesn't make sense if you're not actually there. So if you're there, makes lots of sense. I'm there, makes lots of sense. But for people who just want to say, oh, I'm going to sit in UK and I want to have an international structure for my business, I'm going to have a UK company, I'm going to have a subsidiary, and no, this is it's probably more expensive than you want to be in. The next thing is, unfortunately, one of the weaknesses in UAE is the access to local talent is not significant. What does this mean? And to be fair, they're aware of this problem and they're working on this. They have a plan to bring in 100,000 developers and things like this. That's one of the things I love about UAE is the trajectory is good and things like that. However, the reality is simply that if you're going to hire people for a particular business, it's not a great place to hire people right now. There's just not enough people who have skilled particular specialties, and your costs on a relative basis are not particularly low because the cost of living is not particularly low. And so you can get a much broader talent pool for less money hiring elsewhere. Now, the one thing that's really good is if you actually want to relocate a team there, it's fairly easy to get residence permits for them. So it's pretty easy to relocate a team to UAE, which is not true in a lot of parts of the world. So that's a positive. The next thing is now they brought in corporate tax. So it used to be, you could say, okay, well, at least I'm going to have a zero tax company, right? So yeah, it's going to cost me, whatever, X thousands of dollars per year in extra costs to set up and maintain this company, but I'll have zero tax. It's going to be clean and easy. Well, now they have corporate tax. 9%. Most of the time, most people are going to fall under that 9%. There are some exceptions, but for most businesses, they're not. Now, if you all do fall under one of those exceptions, great. You can discuss that and we can see. But most people will not. Almost all businesses are hit with this 9%. And Again, this is not that big a deal if you live in UAE because there's no personal tax, and there's some ways that you can optimize around this. You can do combinations of international structures and things like this. But if you don't live in UAE, that means you're going to get hit with this 9% tax. It means that you now have to do tax filings, and the tax filings themselves are going to increase your cost quite a bit. I find that most accountants in UAE are pretty trash and very overpriced. I don't really quite understand how they come up with their pricing, but anyway, so that's an issue. And so it's bloating your costs, right? It's like, okay, well, if I can pay 5% tax in Malta, or I can pay, Madeira is kind of a changing thing, but previously 5% in Madeira, I can pay 3% in Labuan, I can pay potentially 0 in Hong Kong. Lower tax rate is 8.25%, depending on how much money I make. If I can go to Hungary and pay 9, if I get, like you start to look at, there's just all these other options that open up when you're like, well, I have to pay 9% tax and I have all these other costs. And so these things are an issue. Another thing is that your payment processing options are not that good. So yes, they have Stripe, yes, they have PayPal, but the costs are much higher. And so there are certain advantages to being able to operate there because you can be a fairly big fish in a small pond. That's pretty useful, and you can take advantage of this in terms of negotiating rates down and things like this, getting some special treatment because you're a large player for that region. But in general, not the most efficient place, unless you're selling to that region, in which case, okay, totally different, right? Banking-wise, the banking is decent, but it's not necessarily that easy. And again, you basically have to be a resident to get banking. If you're not a resident and you can't get local UAE banking, then there's not that many good banking options for you. So if you have, for example, an Estonian company, well, then we have all this EU banking. And there's quite a lot of different options there. You don't have the same thing in UAE because typically the EU banks aren't allowed to deal with or aren't willing to deal with companies from outside of the EU. So you lose that as an option. And so all these things combine together to say that is UAE a good place to form a company? It can be in certain people's case. It is for sure if you're interested in relocating there. And I think there's lots of reasons to relocate there. In fact, all of these things might fit together to say, well, maybe I should tilt myself to going and living in UAE at least part of the year, being a resident there. But if you don't want anything to do with UAE, you just want a place to form a company, this is almost never the best place to form a company. So anyway, depending on your circumstances, this always changes. There's no one size fits all. Please understand that. Anyone who tells you this solution, this solution, this solution is giving you really bad advice. You should run away from that person. It's like a very nuanced decision. So if you're interested in help with that, like I said, send a message through offshorecitizen.net. We can talk to you about whatever place. We're very jurisdiction agnostic. The fact that I live someplace has nothing to do with where you should go and set up, but we're happy to help you with whatever that is and figure out what that best solution is for you. So please let us know in the comments below, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next video.